This is a little bit of a different kind of medical school. They spend a lot of time in small groups, learning through discussion and through research. And the emphasis in all of it is to have them learn the science in a medical context, and that they can actually see why they need to learn some of the science. And in fact, I heard one of the students say that what they liked was that they don't only learn, what and where, but why. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do here.
But the advantage here is A, you have a very small class, it's only 40, so they can have small groups of 8 and they have enough faculty to do it. B, they are really committed to the educational process. So the intensity of the small group learning here and the use of clinical cases right in the first year. This traditional medical school is science 2 years, clinical cases 2 years. So what they've done is to truly integrate both tracks together, not just for the first 2 years, but also for the second 2 years, which is even more unusual, to have science continue to be taught in years 3 and 4. So that's very unusual.
We don't have an entirely blank slate because we are part of MCG and we are constrained to some extent by their curriculum, but it has allowed us some flexibility, and that typically is a problem. Large academic medical centers are, it's like turning a ship. It's a slow process and it's much more difficult.
Our curriculums are totally different. We do so much more small group learning. They do lecture from 8 to 12 every day, and we definitely don't do that. At most 2 hours of lecture a day.
By having a modular curriculum, systems-based, we have taken it one step further to try to integrate more significantly both basic and clinical science, and be able to make every week thematic and to integrate all the different sessions so that the medical student would understand and have something that they could really hang their information on as they work towards learning the basics and integrating it with the more exciting clinical aspects, so they could see the relevance in the basic science and the relevance of all the studying that they have to do.
When I started medical school, I thought it would be a lot more directed learning. I thought that I would be told what to do more, and here it's more self-directed learning. We actually have parts of our curriculum called self-directed learning.
We try to blend it all as much as we can in a purposeful way, so that it becomes part of a story that they can use as the context for their learning. In the past, it's been a lot of lectures, and students simply have to absorb huge volumes of material, and then they get tested on it, they take their boards, and they forget all of it. So they learn it for the test, but it doesn't really stick. And so the trend in medical education has been to go towards these smaller groups, more contextual learning, with the hope that they retain, the more important concepts, and it helps them learn the material.
We start at the beginning of each week with a case, and we spend the whole week working on it, and all the lectures we have, and the biochemistry and the genetics all tie into this one case, which is really, really neat, because you kind of sometimes when you're studying things, if you're studying, you may be studying the skin cells in one class, and then you're studying genetics of something else in another class. But because it ties in, I think it's easier for us to comprehend this way. And cases kind of leave us room for self-discovery and finding making these diagnoses at the end of everything, and just kind of realizing all we learn. But it's kind of like an adventure. Sometimes you don't feel like you're studying, which is kind of cool.
They truly are learning science in the context of the clinical cases in a way that will not be disconnected. It won't be like facts sitting out here, but it'll actually be connected onto into the real life experiences that they will have once they start seeing patients. So it's much more likely that they're going to retain the information and that they will use it. The students are engaged, the students have accepted the process, they own the process.
Somebody said that putting together a medical program, medical school program, really wasn't rocket science, and it was actually harder than rocket science, just because there are so many moving parts. But you don't often get to start a medical school, and we don't realize the complexity of a medical school program until you have to really start putting it together.
It's a tremendous amount of work because the cases have to be written. It's not as easy as it looks to have cases written that will align with the subject matter being taught that week. It's a lot easier to say, here's your subject matter, go teach it, and then hope the students learn. But I think there's no question this is a more effective way to teach. In fact, the liaison committee on medical education that does the accreditation is very strongly pushing medical schools to active learning and to moving away from the didactic. It's kind of an experiment. This is pretty high risk.
And now some of the doubters, okay, this really work, are watching, okay, this integrative system work. Unless you see it in action and have the ability to work with the students and understand how much they've learned, if you have been educated or if you've been teaching in a particular way and it has been successful for you, it is very difficult to think that you could be as or more successful by doing it differently.